that the President's address to Parliament is not a matter that we are just going to limit to 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 3 days. It is a matter that we need to take a little bit more seriously. And how would we do this? The Speaker, in this session, in this year, because the President will address Parliament in this year, we must find a way of getting the President to sit in Parliament at the time of giving the speech and during the time of debate on his speech. The Speaker, because we are a bicameral Parliament, and so we don't want the President to be shuttling between the Senate and the National Assembly, and because the address itself is being done jointly, then I will propose, Mr. Speaker, and the technical team should advise us on this. Why then can we have a situation where, as the President addresses the joint sitting of Parliament, he sits in that joint sitting for the 3 consecutive days to follow debate by both houses of Parliament? In which case, the Speaker, then we will begin to add value to governance. And the President will be getting information and advice from members of the National Assembly and members of the Senate one-on-one, without having to follow through newspapers or media reports. The Speaker, let us take Article 132 a lot more seriously on the functions of the President. Let's take the sovereignty of the people of Kenya a lot more seriously, because we are the people, we are the leaders that the people of Kenya have delegated the power and their sovereignty to on matters legislation. The Speaker, I support.
Senator Wakili Hillary.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity also to support the motion that has been laid down by the Majority Whip. And from the very onset, Mr. Speaker, what the Honorable Senator from Kitui told this House with regards to the provision of the Constitution, Article 1 and Article 132, is very important, to the extent that this power is donated to the organ of the presidency. And that is the main reason why address to Parliament by the President is important at the beginning of every elected Parliament and once every year. That underscores the importance of that particular address. And that address, Mr. Speaker, is so sacrosanct to this House and to the people of Kenya who donated the power to the government of the day. When my friend Senator Eddie talks about 2 minutes, he's trivializing that speech. He's trivializing the importance of that debate, because it is not about those who will support or those who will go against. It is an opportunity that gives this House to debate on the speech, because that speech talks about the promises made, what has been done, what has been achieved, and what has not been achieved, including the plans which are ahead for purposes of delivering to the people of Kenya. And therefore, when the House decides to debate, it is about supporting and criticizing the speech that the President, at any given time when he's supposed to address the House, is made. And therefore, the duration which is given is also objective. It doesn't make sense, therefore, to say we just spare 2 minutes of that time. The Honorable Senator Okech once given an opportunity. In fact, the 2 minutes is not sufficient for him to do the preliminaries before he criticizes, if any, such a speech whenever the President addresses. And therefore, when we debate, let us debate so that we achieve the mandate of the House by criticizing where necessary and enhancing very objective debate on the speech of the President at any given time that he addresses the House. I equally want to also support the proposition that where possible, and if it means amending the relevant provisions of the law, it would be very key and important where the president sits through the sessions when that speech is being debated by the houses. It will not only give the parliament an opportunity to have a conversation, it will give us as members of this house also an opportunity to look through whatever debate that we are going to do. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion and I rest.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, Article 132, which gives the President an opportunity to appear in the House and give a national address, goes on in its sub-article 2, sub-article 1.3, that report in address in the nation on all the measures taken and the progress achieved in the realization of the national values referred to Article 10. So Article 10 is key in this address, and Article 10 gives direction in very many things on governance. And Article 10 talks about mainly part of the things such as public participation, whereby even the government itself can do direct public participation to the people before it brings a legislative proposal here. And again, when we now make regulations as to how long each one of us will contribute, this address is supposed to be so key and so important as it also goes into the policy and what the country and the nation intends to do in the following 1 year. Mr. Speaker, this is such a serious matter that once the President addresses, then I agree with Honorable Mugatana. It is very prudent that the President also finds time to get a direct feedback from the legislators. Because, Mr. Speaker, that sets the country into a motion, and probably that's where we've been going wrong. The President will get an opportunity to hear the majority side, and the President will also get an opportunity to hear the minority side personally and following the proceedings, not be briefed by others. And the fact that he appears personally, then it is important for him also to get a response personally. And I think that's a practice we need to adopt so that this address and this motion becomes meaningful and sets the country into the right track at the right time. And most probably, you see, there are many legislators in this House who are very specified in certain areas. There are engineers here who really help in roads, water, reservation, and things like that. There are financial experts here who will probably advise the country better and will not have gone into this, very expensive cost of living and making Kenyans feel, very aggrieved. If such had been shared in this, probably the President and the government, because the moment we address the President, we are also addressing his Minister for Finance and others, then the government is set in the right mood and the right motion as it is required under Article 10. And then the national values, finally, Mr. Speaker, are so important that that's what all we should follow. The fight against corruption. I'm sure you get very good proposals. The budgeting process, the budgets, what needs to be allocated to where. And the worst of it, Mr. Speaker, is that corruption is what messes up completely the economy of this country. We budget for corruption. We budget, a few people take that money to their pockets, the rest suffer. And worst of it is if you overtax the middle class, then you have killed the hustlers, because the middle class is the one which supports the hustlers. At the moment you mistreat the middle class, it's a sure way of exiting from government. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Tabitha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do rise to support this motion by my brother, the Majority Whip. And I say that Article 1.2 is very clear, which talks about representation of the people by the elected leaders. As leaders, the presidential address feedback gives us an opportunity to be able to have the reality feel of the discussions in terms of what the president has been able to share and put across according to the manifesto that was done during the election time. It is very important, Mr. Speaker, because then it gives members or leaders in both houses an opportunity to be able to address facts in a more diplomatic and in a more leadership style, unlike what we've seen previously that has been happening. This is the best platform that Kenyans should know. Then there is room for a national level executive discussion that comes from a presidential level to the members who are elected, so that there is mutual understanding and also there is a level of getting to the bottom of the facts. I just had my brother, Senator from Makueni, Senator Manzo, talking about looking at budgets. But what makes it funny is that when he talks about budgeting for corruption, and then I wonder from the side that we come from, of course, representing the government, does the opposition look at working through budgeting on corruption? Because when an elected senator talks about budgets on corruption, it leaves a lot to be desired, because then you wonder from which perspective then he looks at things. He's entitled to his opinion, but as an elected leader, a lot is left questionable, you know. We have had different executives also who represent the government, especially from the ministerial point, having platforms to appear in this parliament. But they also answer to the president. So it is in that platform during these addresses that members can also be able to escalate further issues and be able to have proper discussions as far as when the president is in the house. The best formula, in my opinion, would be within those 3 days of the presidential discussion, a day should be set where the president appears in the National Assembly and has a day with the members of the National Assembly. And a day that is set that the president also is in Senate and has a platform with all the senators. Because all the 67 senators represent the Republic of Kenya, despite the political side that we come from. But the agenda and the constitution that we uphold is a constitution for this country. It's not a constitution for Dr. William Ruto. It's a constitution for this country. And the best results that we give to our generations and the generations to come is to be able to have facts that can also be addressed. You realize most of the time that we are having this input, you realize, yes, that we know there's a bit of repeat of the same discussion. But when the debate is narrowed to a fewer minutes, then it gives members a platform to be able to just tackle the issues that have not been tackled. I want to agree with Senator Eddy, one of the good senators in the House, that at times the platform is used for lamentation. Kenyans did not give us this opportunity to lament. Kenyans gave this opportunity because we are the change makers. We are the ones to shape the generations to be. So in a nutshell, I support this motion and look forward that we'll not use it to lament. On the timeline that Dr. Boni had talked about, that the president should appear within the timeline that is in the month of April, then that should be so that we pride in upholding our constitution as leaders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Onyonka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great pleasure to have an opportunity to contribute for such an insightful and indeed a good motion. Mr. Speaker, one of the things I would like to recommend and request my colleagues in this House is that anytime we have something that is good, whether it's brought by government or whether it's brought by our side, please let us listen to each other and let us try and look for a middle ground. In the West, they call it the bipartisanship, the ability for us to look at what is good between us as leaders because we agree on those things that would benefit Kenyans most. If we find that there are things we can disagree on, Mr. Speaker, those ones we can then put onto the side and kind of move along, because sometimes democracy is back and forth. The other issue I would like to raise here, Mr. Speaker, is that I would like to encourage my colleagues here that democracy, this thing we call democracy, is not that the winner must take it all. Sometimes it's a give and take. And an idea like this, Mr. Speaker, if it is necessary for us, initially maybe, to start listening to the president when he makes his speech, his annual address to the nation, if it means we listen to him for 2 days, I don't think there's a problem with that. Neither would it worry many of us if we did it for 2 days. The other issue that I am comfortable, I'm looking forward to, as a senator in this house and as a leader, is that I would like, in order for us, Mr. Speaker, as members of the opposition, to be given an opportunity to reconstitute shadow cabinetry. In other words, you find the way the current government and system is set up, we need to have our side also having people who can take many of our cabinet members, many of the government cabinet members to task on issues, even when they come to this house to answer questions. I think it is also important that if we had a shadow cabinet, you would find that many of our members have the capacity to challenge or even to raise critical questions about our country and the issues which are coming out. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the point that I feel I need to emphasize, I have seen the comments and the contributions that my colleagues have made, and there's a likelihood that those who are in government are going to feel that such an opportunity will make we in the opposition come here to rant at the president and ridicule him and try and pass him and talk about him in bad light. I don't think that is really the purpose of this exercise. I think Kenya as a country is highly respected regionally for one simple reason. People know that I will take an opportunity, I will criticize the government, I will criticize the president, so long as it's not personally. And basically, they will understand. But in other countries, that never happens, Mr. Speaker. So I think the opportunity of us having an opportunity where we sit in the house and the president is sitting somewhere and is listening to these contributions of the issues affecting our country makes Kenya a better place to live and a better place to work. And for us leaders, it will give us an opportunity to make Kenyans feel that we are actually a united front in trying to solve their problems. Mr. Speaker, we should try our level best and make sure that we do not permanently subdivide our country where it is for and those are against. Sometimes it's in between. Sometimes we carry each other, sometimes we encourage each other, and sometimes we go our separate ways. But we are better off when we are Kenyans and we look at this country that we love dearly and we want to succeed so that we leave it for posterity and our children. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion passionately. Thank you, sir.
Senator Wafula.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa nafasi hii. Ningependa vile vile kuongeza sauti na mchango wangu kwa mchakato wa muda utakaochukua rais kuhutubia jamii ya Kenya, na vile vile sisi kama viongozi wa jumbe katika bunge la Senate kutoa michango yetu. Kwangu Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba isiwe kwamba rais anapohutubia nchi katika jumba la kitaifa ni kama kuwe na sherehe za kitaifa pale ambapo wanazungumza, tunapiga makofi, watu wanakunywa na kula na kuhesabu siku baada ya siku. Tunataraji kwamba yale ambayo viongozi katika jumba hili watatamka, mikakati ama vile mdahalo utakavyokuwa unachukua mikondo tofauti, lazima mawaziri ambao watakuwa wameambatana na Mheshimiwa Rais wahakikishe kwamba mabadiliko haya yanashuhudiwa katika wakati unaostahili. Mheshimiwa Rais, sisi ambao tuko katika serikali tuna jukumu kubwa kwamba japo tunawapa watu matumaini, lazima washuhudie na wajihusishe katika kutekeleza yale tunazungumza. Najiunga na wale katika mrengo wa upinzani kwamba isiwe rais akizungumza ni kana kwamba ametamatisha yale yote atakayosema ama atakayofanya, lakini ni kuhakikisha kwamba anapozungumza atende, na kutenda kwake ni sisi katika serikali kuhakikisha tunawasukuma mawaziri kutekeleza yale ambayo tunataka. Mwaka 2027 tutakuwa katika mchakato wa kura, na wapiga kura watatuuliza, mlizungumza mkatupa matumaini, iwaje hamukutenda chochote? Sasa mimi kama mkereketo wa serikali ni kwamba rais aje, na ikiwezekana aje katika jumba la Senate, kwa sababu Senate huzungumza mambo ya county. Kuna pesa ambazo wanabiashara hawajalipwa, kuna mikakati ama agenda za county ambazo watu tajadili hapa. Lazima rais ajue kwamba yale tunayotarajiwa kufanya kama Senate ni tofauti sana na yale ambayo wale katika jumba la kitaifa hufanya, na kwamba anapotujibu ama anapopeana mwelekeo kuhusiana na ugatuzi, lazima Wakenya wajue Senate, jumba la Senate ndio ulinzi, ndio matumaini ama ndio ngao ya ugatuzi katika nchi ya Kenya. Sasa mimi naunga mkono, tupewe nafasi mwafaka, tujieleze, rais atusikize, na baadaye tuone akitekeleza ama mawaziri wake wakitekeleza yale ambayo tunazungumza hapa, kwa sababu siamini kwamba seneta yeyote katika nchi ya Kenya anaweza amka hapa akapeana mwelekeo hafifu ama akapotosha rais kuhusiana na kutekelezaji wa miradi ya maendeleo na falsafa ya nchi. Sasa lazima atusikize sisi wote na atende kwa mujibu wa katiba. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Petrus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to support the motion that was brought by the majority whip, Senator Boni Halwale. Mr. Speaker, on the President's address to Parliament, I want to support that should happen. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, that should not only be a formality, that the President comes to Parliament and addresses parliamentarians on a number of issues. Mr. Speaker, sir, a number of concerns for Kenyans remain unresolved. And I look forward to the coming presidential address to Parliament addressing a number of issues that are of concern to Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, the issue of the junior secondary school remains unsolved. It is not a secret that our students, a number of them, and a number of schools and in major regions went untaught. Mr. Speaker, sir, the nature of secondary school is that teachers are trained to teach 2 subjects. But, Mr. Speaker, when you look around in most of the schools, there were only 2 teachers that were posted to teach in our schools. And, Mr. Speaker, that shows that in most of the schools, a number of subjects were not taught in the whole year. Mr. Speaker, it's not easy to take this for granted because it only means that most of the subjects were not taught, and so that generation will have an education system that is wanting. Mr. Speaker, if that is repeated this year and the following year and the years to come, it means that our products will not be competing with the products from other regions. Mr. Speaker, as the President comes, I'm looking forward that will be addressed amongst other challenges that our people have, including the issue that concerns this country, the issue of house levy. Mr. Speaker, as the President comes, we are also looking forward to a very robust debate in Parliament after that, and I pray that the debates and our sentiments will be taken care of. I support, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Essie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to support this motion, yes. The president, being a representative of the people, is actually a very integral symbol for parliament also. Mr. Speaker, in as much as this is a platform for the president to articulate his agenda and communicate what his intentions to the country are, I don't think it should be more about the debating. On that, I want to slightly deviate, because in as much as we debate very well on some of these issues, if action is not followed thereafter, then it becomes more of a praise and worship agenda, Mr. Speaker, which will not steer this country forward. Mr. Speaker, this is an opportunity for government to articulate what their agenda is, and I do not even understand why some of our cabinet secretaries have been shying off from coming here and articulating the agenda they have, or rather how they are sorting some of the issues we are saying. Just like Senator Beatrice has mentioned the issue of JSS teachers. The other time before we went for recess, I raised a statement inquiring from TSC on the career progression of those people, and the response given back to me was focusing on retired teachers, which I saw was an attempt to dodge the question I was raising. Several thousands of young people watching this engagement this morning are actually looking forward to this House to address some of those issues facing them. So, Mr. Speaker, the President will come and guide us here very well. We are ambassadors of what our administration is doing, but we have a burden of responsibility to also ensure we actualize whatever promises we gave to our people. And I weep for young people, because if sincerely education is the key, then why do we make it so difficult for people who have gone to school? The other time I saw a report by EACC mentioning of people with forged academic papers. We have so many young people lying out there with very good qualifications. Some of them are even going to the graves with unfulfilled dreams, Mr. Speaker. So yes, we are going to support the President articulating his agenda here. In this case, if I actually mention our President, Dr. William Ruto, has been on the forefront defending what his agenda is, in as much as I take note that we have our own share of challenges, but we as legislators, this shouldn't be a platform of competing to see who's doing what best. This is an opportunity for we to bring our brains together, regardless of whatever political side you are in, so that we tackle the challenges that are facing this country jointly, Mr. Speaker. I beg to support that motion with those remarks. Thank you.
Senator Asige Christo.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you and honorable members a very happy new year. Speaker, I rise to just make one point on this topic. When the President comes and makes his address to parliamentarians twice so far, the Parliament grounds is always alight with activities. It's buzzing with preparations being made to receive the President and his delegation, and parliamentarians who are very keen to hear the agenda that he will set forth. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, so far, there has been no agenda that I have heard of addressing the constituents that I stand here to represent every single day. Mr. Speaker, twice we have heard the voice of the President, and twice we have not heard the voice of the President speaking on matters of disability inclusion, of equity, and of diversity in this country. Mr. Speaker, in the campaign trail, Dr. William Samuel Ruto walked That's what I said. Maybe my accent is passing the heads of others. Mr. Speaker, when Dr. Ruto went into his campaign trail in 2022, he called many of us people with disabilities. He sat with us in many forums. He picked our brains in terms of what we wish to see this country look like in terms of inclusion. And we gave him ideas, and we had conversations across the country in hopes that this agenda will one day come into fruition. Unfortunately, in the opening of Parliament 2022 and in the State of the Nation address last year, we did not hear our voices or our ideas articulated in the President's address. And still, Mr. Speaker, we do not hear of the same. So we wonder, is this just an exercise of lip service? Because in my view, when I came into this place to represent persons with disabilities, I saw the President's address being somewhat of an open feedback loop, where he comes to address parliamentarians, to give his ideas and direction, and we in turn respond with our reactions and contributions on how to make those ideas better. But unfortunately, so far, it feels to our community, persons with disabilities, that he addresses us, but he does not listen when we try to address our issues to him. Mr. Speaker, if ever the President hears my voice, I hope that he hears it today. The representative of persons with disabilities in this Senate, requesting him to kindly put forth our agenda, to prioritize the largest minority in this country of almost 6 million voters. That is persons with disabilities, a group that should no longer be ignored, because we have votes, we also have money to spend in this economy. We can also make a big change and move the needle in all plans regarding Kenya. So I hope that in future, Mr. Speaker, that the President's addresses will also address us, because we are waiting to be publicly seen and heard by the executive. I thank you.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to address this House. Mr. Speaker, on the motion that has been brought before this House or moved by the Majority Whip, Mr. Speaker, as you will notice, it's referred to as a procedural motion, and that's what it is, procedural. It is a tool designed by the Constitution to give the President an opportunity to come back and account to this House on the mandate that has been placed on him by the Constitution and ultimately by the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, when the President comes to address the House, the symbolic address is not just to the House, it is an address to the representatives of the people. Mr. Speaker, those have been elected by the people of Kenya to represent them in the House, Mr. Speaker. And if you will notice, Mr. Speaker, in the functions of the President, that comes in as the top function of the President, and that shows just how important that tool is, not just to the House itself, but also to the Constitution and also to the people of Kenya. And Mr. Speaker, having noted that, then it shows just how important this procedural motion is and why it cannot be trivialized into politics, Mr. Speaker. Because when the President comes to address the House, and as he addresses the Kenyan through the legislative arm, Mr. Speaker, he's coming to give an account of what he has done with the mandate and the implementation of the promise that have been given to the Kenya, especially during the election period, Mr. Speaker. It's an address that deals with the day-to-day issues that Kenyans are going through: health, education, security, issues, food security, Mr. Speaker, issues that deal with general security or insecurity of the nation, budgetary constraints or budgets that Kenya is running on, Mr. Speaker. It deals with the whole mandate that the executive is working on, Mr. Speaker. And as such, it becomes an important tool through which this House, Mr. Speaker, can also use to address the constituents, because these leaders also are called to account by the people, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's very easy for the members of parliament to put a big focus on the presidents and the address without remembering that equally, as you cascade downwards, the members of Senate and members of the National Assembly will be required by Kenyans to equally give an account with what they have done as a mandate, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, when I listened to one of our colleagues saying that members should address these issues in 2 minutes, then I knew we are misunderstanding the procedural motion that is before this House, Mr. Speaker. One of the things we should not use is to politicize the presidential address. And I'm in total agreement when there is a proposal that the president should sit in, actually hear the members give the feedback, because that feedback is a performance appraisal, Mr. Speaker. And it should be objective, because if the presidency succeeds, the nation succeeds. If the presidency fails, the nation fails, Mr. Speaker. And the minute we recognize that, Mr. Speaker, we will be more keen to come in and give objective criticism when that debate is being done. Give commendations where it is due, give objective criticism where it is needed, Mr. Speaker, and improve the process along the way. The minute we understand how such a tool is supposed to help governance issues, then, Mr. Speaker, it will come to yield for the Kenyans. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion, and I rise to say that it should not be trivialized, and the tool should be dealt with as an important tool and given sufficient time, Mr. Speaker. One other thing I wish to note, Mr. Speaker, ni kwamba Senator mmoja kati yetu, Senator Wakoli,
Senator Veronica, you are totally out of order. You need to stick on the language that you chose first to make a contribution.
Mr. Speaker, why I switched that language and I stand advised, Mr. Speaker, was to commend Senator Wakoli Wafula for being very good in Swahili. And I wanted to state it in Swahili and to say that when he's next taking tea among the senators, he should be taking 1 minute to instruct the senators on how to address the nation sometimes using the Kiswahili language and promoting the Kiswahili language among the Kenyans. That's why I was switching the language, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Kavindu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this motion, procedural motion that has been brought by Majority Whip. Mr. Speaker, it's very important for the address of both houses by the President, and this, we get to know what is manifesto and what he plans for the country. And again, also, Mr. Speaker, I do support that he should also, after the address, sit in the House and listen to the debates about his address, because this one will enable him to know what he has been able to do and what he has not been able to do, because many of the times, Mr. Speaker, leaders are surrounded by people who only tell them what they want to hear, and only want to praise them even when they have not done some things. They don't have the strength to tell them the truth. And this one will enable him to know the truth, and this one will not just be bad on him or for the country, but also to help him fulfill all what he has promised to do to the citizens. And we are here to build Kenya, all of us, whether in opposition or in the ruling party. We are here to build Kenya and come together and make sure that our people get what they need at the right time when they need it. The economy right now is very low, very down. Actually, I don't know if the rest of the members of
Parliament and even Senate are getting the same calls that I get every day, for people asking for school fees, for people asking for food, for people asking for medication, and so on and so forth. And so we need to come together and know the way forward for our country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support.
Senator Mundigi.
Asante, Bwana Spika. Naunga mkono ambaye ya ile mambo tunazungumzia hapa, vile tunazungumza tupatiwe muda ipunguzwe, ndio kila mtu katika Senate, tuko maseneta 67 na sisi wote hakuna hataki kuchangia kwa sababu tumetoka masinani na tunajua vile kunaendelea. Na unga mkono kwa sababu pia nakumbuka kama mwaka jana wakati rais alizungumza mambo mengi sana ambaye economy, na pia alikuwa anaongea mambo ya afya masinani, na hiyo tumeona ametimiza, na akaongea tena mambo ya kilimo na tunaona vile mambo inaendelea. Na pia wakati tulichangia na tukamunga mkono, tutakuwa tunachangia tuone kama kuna mambo inaweza pandilika, kama sasa kutoka wakati hiyo wakati tuliingia kama upande ya makadamia ilikuwa inatoka shilingi 30 na sasa inatoka shilingi 100 na kitu. Kwa hiyo kuchangia mambo ya rais ni kitu muhimu sana. Pia tunakumbuka wakati ule alisema mambo ya kilimo, akaongea mambo ya fertilizer ikarundi kutoka 6,500 na ikawa imekuja 2,500, na tumeona vile kilimo inaendelea mambo mingi. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri muda ipunguzwe na pia tuwe tukichangia mambo mengi. Pia mambo ingine ningetaka kuwa tutakuwa nachangia ni vile tutaweka maanane mambo ya kilimo, kila county iwe ikipata maji ya kulima na vitu zingine, ndio tuweze kuona mazao mazuri. Kitu kingine tutachangia ni kuwa tutajua kama hiyo mambo yote tutafanya, mambo ya pesa mkononi itarudi namna gani na tutaweza kukaa namna gani. Pia tulisikia alichangia mambo ya economy, na pia tumeona vile kumekuwa na shinda, na pia akasema vile mandeni imekuwa mingi na amekuwa akilipa mandeni, na pia akisaidia county, na tumeona county nyingi ikipokea pesa, sio kama miaka ile ingine tumeona ikipokea kila mwezi, kutoka mwezi wa 7 kila mwezi inapata pesa yake. Na pia mambo ingine tutachangia ni mambo ya pia Kenya yetu, vijana wetu na wasichana, vijana wamewachiliwa na mambo ya pombe na dawa ya kulevya. Kuna wakati utafika ukute Kenya haina vijana ama haina familia, kwa sababu kama hiyo mambo kama haitachukuliwa hatua, ndio tuone kama kuna uwezo kama kila county inaweza patiwa pesa ya kuwa ikipeleka hao vijana kwa mafunzo mambo ya madawa ya kulevya na pombe, ndio waweze kukaa vizuri kwa familia zao. Kwa hiyo asante Bwana Spika, naunga mkono.
Senator Miraj.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kuweza kunipa fursa hii adhimu na mimi niweze kuunga mkono mswada uliopendekezwa na kiongozi wa wengi, kiranja wa wengi hapa bungeni Bwana Khalwale, ili kuwezwe kupunguzwa muda ili kila mjumbe aweze kuchangia katika speech ya rais anapozungumza na sisi wabunge ama wajumbe wa taifa hili. Bwana Spika, nimesikia wenzangu wamechangia na nimenukuu mingi nikiwa pale lounge, na nikasema na mimi nije nipeane changizo zangu. Bwana Spika, nataka kuwakumbusha wajumbe wenzangu ya kwamba tuko hapa kama mkono mmoja miongoni mwa mikono mitatu mwa serikali yetu ya Kenya. Na hatuko hapa kuwa wapinzani na wenye serikali. Tuko hapa na majukumu matatu ya kuwakilisha wananchi wa Kenya, kusimamia rasilimali zao, na pia kuwatungia sheria za kulinda na kusongeza taifa letu mbele. Sisi kama wajumbe katika bunge la Seneti tuko na jukumu moja kubwa la kusimamia gatuzi zetu 47 katika taifa la Kenya. Lakini ni jambo la kusikitisha sana kuona kwamba rais anapokuja kutuzungumzia yale ambao ameweza kuyafanya kama mkono mmoja wa serikali, the executive, sisi tunaanza kukejeli yale ambao amekuja kutueleza. Yangu ni kuwapa ushauri na saha, ndugu zangu, sote tulioko hapa. Tuko na jukumu katika taifa hili kama viongozi kuweza kupeana mwelekeo na kutoa suluhu ya matatizo ambayo yanatukabili sisi kama taifa. Ni vizuri sana Wakenya wanatuangalia kule nje, Bwana Spika, katika mirengo tofauti. Lakini ni muhimu sisi wenyewe tujue lile jukumu kubwa ambalo limetuleta katika bunge hili. Ni kuwezesha kuwa wasimamizi wa rasilimali za Wakenya, kuwa viongozi ambao wanaona tatizo lipo wapi. Yuko kiongozi mmoja hapa amezungumzia masuala ya CBC. Na sisi kama viongozi wadogo, Bwana Spika, ambao ndio sasa mwanzo tunaanza ulezi, tuko na watoto wetu katika taasisi hii. Watoto wetu wameanza kusoma, Bwana Spika, na mpaka sasa hakuna mwelekeo wa kuonesha watoto hawa watakwenda vipi na kuelekea vipi. Kando na kuwa wengine wetu tunasemekana kwamba ni vibaraka wa serikali, mimi nataka kuwakumbusha wajumbe wenzangu hapa, mimi ni mjumbe wa kike ambaye nimepewa fursa kuweza kuja katika nyumba hii kuweza kuongea masuala ya kijinsia na kuwasaidia kuongeza na kutilia pondo pale ambapo naona kuna sheria zinatungwa na zinatuumiza sisi kama kina mama, ama nichangie kuonesha ni njia hii tukiifuata itasaidia kina mama na vijana katika taifa hili la Kenya. Nataka kuwaambia ndugu zangu ambao wakienda mashinani, Bwana Spika, wanasema kwamba wajumbe wa upinzani hawapawi fursa sawa na wajumbe ambao wako upande wa serikali kutunga sheria. Huo ni urongo wa mchana. Hapa kila mtu ako na fursa ya kutunga sheria na kuchangia hisia zake ili kuleta suluhu katika taifa la Kenya. Tuko hapa ili kuweza kuwasaidia Wakenya.
What is a point of order, Senator Eddy?
Speaker, I rise on the point of order number 1044, and also actually limiting debates actually, Mr. Speaker. I think that it's not in order, and I never want to interrupt my sister Senator Miraj, because I enjoy the tantalizing Swahili that she brings into this house. But I think that, Mr. Speaker, the topic that we have here and the discussion that we have here is whether we limit the debate, the debate on the presidential speech, and it's not in order for the wonderful senator from Mombasa and nominated to actually suggest that there are members from the opposition side who are claiming some claims that she knows best, which have got totally no relevance to this particular conversation, Mr. Speaker. So could she just limit a debate to the matter at hand and not the hisia za what she calls the hisia za watu wa huku? Asante sana.
Again, Senator Eddy, what is your the standing order that you're relying on? 1014.
Doctor, imputing wrong motive on our side for what we haven't claimed and this conversation at all.
Very well, Senator Miraj. According to your statement, you are suggesting that members of the opposition are out there lamenting that they're not being given an opportunity to present bills, and that the favoritism is towards the majority side. Is that a statement of fact? If not, you may have to proceed with the draw.
Asante Bwana Spika, na kwa kweli ni statement ambayo nimeizungumza nikiwa na ushahidi nayo na nitaileta katika bunge hili. Asante Bwana Eddie Okech, takuletea ushahidi Bwana Spika. Lakini
Tomorrow,
yangu tu ni kuweka wazi.
Senator Miraj,
Naam.
if you're unable to substantiate that, I'll give you an opportunity to do so tomorrow.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Asante Bwana Spika. Yangu ni kwamba Bwana Spika, nikizungumzia na nikimalizia, sisi hapa tumekuja kama Wakenya ili kuleta suluhu na kutatua matatizo ambayo yanatukabili kama Wakenya. Ni vibaya sana kuona viongozi wa upinzani, ndugu zetu ambao tunakunywa nao chai na tunapiga tu story kama kawaida, tunapofika katika jumba hili wanaleta siasa nyingi. Mimi niko tayari rais aambiwe pale anafanya makosa ili huduma kwa wananchi ziweze kuafikiwa kwa malengo. Asante Bwana Spika.
Senator Mariam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, first of all, Happy New Year to you and other colleagues of mine, of senators who are around. Mr. Speaker, this motion about President address is more of President addressing implementation of his plan. Mr. Speaker, the last President address, the President omitted ASAL counties, specifically pastoralist. So I urge to the President, this time he will cater for the ASAL counties for the implementations. On that scenario, on that issue, there is a road which has been given to Mande Elwak to Mande Ramo, which
Senator
is financed by...
Mariam.
Yes.
Senator Mariam, if you look at your order paper, you'll see the motion that is being discussed now. We are not debating the address by the President that was done last year. We are debating the motion as read to you and as moved by the majority leader. So just speak to that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I know it is a motion for the limitations, but because the President's address is more of implementation of his plan. So now when he's doing his plan address, I'm just reminding that last time there is omission of ASAL counties. Now I predict there will be implementation of some activities in ASAL area. I know the motion is about the limitation of President's address. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Gloria Oroba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion on the limitation of debate on the President's address. Mr. Speaker, I think I want to echo one of the statements that it must have been Senator Agnes Kavindu who has suggested that perhaps also the President should sit in to listen to some of the criticism, the objective criticism from this House. Mr. Speaker, I think for me, what I want to say is that I believe that in his presence, most of our senators, fellow senators, who sometimes just criticize for purposes of criticizing without any objective wisdom, will then be able to speak truthfully in front of the electorate on matters that truly count. So that is a very good suggestion from Senator Agnes. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that in this, we tend to underestimate the communication from the President. And sometimes, and I remember way back, I must have been young, very young, when Kenyans were complaining that they had a president who never used to talk, who never used to communicate, and so people were in the dark. Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate His Excellency William Samoei Ruto for actually keeping the communications lines open. And it's not only through the presidential address, but through the daily communication that he has with the electorate, both from the executive and on ground as he goes to speak to the people. And so therefore, Mr. Speaker, I just urge that in this particular address that is upcoming, that he may also communicate in terms of the gender agenda, Mr. Speaker. It is far too long that the two-third gender rule has not been spoken of, Mr. Speaker. Not in the presidential address, not in the constant communication that we get from the executive, Mr. Speaker. And it is very unfortunate because I do know that a lot of work is being done by the executive, by the president, to ensure that the Kenya Kwanza Women Charter is being implemented. But Mr. Speaker, there's been very limited communication of the same in terms of the gender agenda. Mr. Speaker, I also hope to hear that the policies and some of the work that is being done in that space of women empowerment is actually going to be communicated this time. Because, Mr. Speaker, some of us who are nominated to represent women in this house, people ask us, what is happening? You went there to represent women, to push for the agenda of women, but the government is quiet. Government is not quiet. It's just that there is no communication that is being put out that is clear, that is intentional, to actually inform Kenyans on what the president and the cabinet is doing in terms of empowering women and having women being represented in these spaces. So, Mr. Speaker, in the upcoming presidential address, I do hope that this particular message is going to be communicated. And even as we look forward to the conference on the status of women that is happening in New York, we want to hear the president echoing issues that are affecting women, not only issues that come up. For instance, now there is a lot of talk. We are celebrating, we are mourning, we are not celebrating, we are mourning the lives of our lost women who have been killed through femicide, Mr. Speaker. We want to hear what those offices that have been mandated to represent women and to protect women through the cabinet, through the executive, what they are doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion because I do believe that all 16 nominated women in the House will then get time to speak and air their views in terms of the gender agenda, and also to be able to question or to objectively criticize on the work that is being done in that space, on the representation of women and the policies and the projects that the Kenya Kwanza government has for the women of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Munyahaji.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia hoja ya kuweka muda katika kujadili hotuba ya Rais ambayo inatarajiwa nafikiri mwezi wa 4. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza nachukua fursa hii kuwatakia
8.2 FM. We are in charge. 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 8.2 FM. We